Good morning, everyone. No big intro today. We don't need it. All we need to tell you is it's day 5 of Worlds, and it is the biggest day of the magic year. It's Christmas, Easter, every festival you've ever celebrated in one easy-to-digest Sunday morning through Sunday afternoon through Sunday night package. I'm your host, Rich Hagan, welcoming you to Nice, France, sitting alongside the mighty booth that is the Pro Tour historian, Mr. Brian David Marshall, and the Hall of Famer, Mr. Randy Buehler. Cast of thousands waiting in the wings. What a day it's going to be. BDM, pick out one thing that you want to see today.
I would like to see some people waving the American flag at the end of the day.
Fine. Randy Buehler, assuming you can't have that, something else that you would look for today?
First ever two-time world champion.
Right, so that's...
Shahar versus Yuya in the semis. One of them is going to get to play to be the first ever repeat world champion.
Okay, well, why don't we take a look at the top 4 bracket for the World Championship. 4 players will be here this afternoon, battling it out in the best 3 out of 5 in the standard format. So there you see, we will have Yuya Watanabe, already a world champion 2012, up against the 2013 iteration, the reigning champion, Shahar Shenhar of Israel, who so nearly made it to the top 8 of the World Magic Cup. And our second semi-final sees the innovator Patrick Chapin, who qualified for the World Championship by winning the last Pro Tour, up against the second Japanese player in the top 4, Kentaro Yamamoto. And BDM, they are going to be 2 fantastic matches. Talking to William Jensen last night, he said there is literally no combination of results in the semis and some version of the final that would surprise him. It's wide open.
Yeah, you're going to see these players 3-card Montying their sideboards throughout all these matches, or best 3 out of 5 Montying their sideboards. Really, that's where this battle is going to be fought. One of the most exciting decks in this top 4 is clearly Yuya Watanabe's deck. He came in with this deck that nobody was expecting, this Jeskai Ascendancy aggro deck that kind of blew up the metagame and really sent teams scrambling for the World Magic Cup to figure out how they could incorporate that deck into their lineup of 3 decks in Unified Standard.
It's going to be great stuff, but that's hours and hours of amazing magic away. Because first, we have the top 8, the top 4, and the final of the World Magic Cup. Let's show you the bracket for our top 8 this morning. So there you see it. Now, first up on the docket, we have South Korea against Greece. And BDM, you're going to go and see what's going on in that match for us.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching this. This is a battle between 2 huge... not necessarily country rivals, but 2 Magic Online players who are tremendous superstar. Oh, I'm sorry. That's, well, NSW.
Yeah.
Right, for South Korea.
But Greece has been the sort of Cinderella story in this.
Yeah, they are absolutely the Cinderella. They finished 32nd after day 1, snuck in by the barest of margins, knocking out Japan, who we thought Yuya Watanabe had won his bubble match to sort of win it in, but he was on the wrong side of the bubble. The Greeks took full advantage, going not only from 32nd into the top 16, but now into the top 8.
Okay, now I think we shouldn't tease people at home any longer because everyone wants to know what will be on camera. Let's look at the bracket once again. We've seen South Korea against Greece. BDM is going to go and look at that. Slovak Republic against the United States, that is our feature match here in the quarterfinals. And with good reason, because, Randy, you have some of the best players left in this competition who are on a collision course in this.
Oh, absolutely. This is 2 of the pre-tournament favorites. The Slovak Republic was one of only 2 teams that could field a lineup with 3 different Pro Tour top 8 competitors. But then, interestingly, they choose not to. Matej Zadokai is actually sitting in the coach role so that he can keep an eye on all the matches. I mean, Ivan Floch probably not going to need much help, but he'll be watching both Michael Godin's match and Jan Tomczany's match in the coach role for Big Z.
Well, the way they described it actually is you'll have Matej Zadelkai sitting on one player, and you'll have Ivan Floch playing his match and keeping an eye on the other. That was how they tried to split things up optimally throughout the Swiss rounds. They really wanted both of their most experienced and most recently experienced players keeping an eye on the other two.
And then Team USA, of course. Owen Turtenwald, #1 ranked player in the world, and fitfully so. Everyone believes he's well deserving of that mark. And the rest of the team can play too. I mean, Neil Oliver is a truly great player with 3 awesome Grand Prix results. Everyone's expecting him to break through in the Pro Tour any day now. And then you've also got Grand Prix top 8s, both from Isaac Sears and from Andrew Beckstrom.
All right, back to the bracket, and our third quarterfinal will see Serbia up against Denmark. And Randy, you're going to keep an eye on this one for us.
I am. Yeah, no, this should be an interesting match.
Yep, and then, well, England against Brazil. Strangely enough, I thought I might pop my head in and see what's going on there.
Are you sure you're up to it? Can you handle it?
I think I'm going to manage. All I have to say is, England, you must do well, otherwise the end of day wrap could be just terrible, terrible, terrible. Please win, please win. So England, Brazil, a fantastic performance, and BDM, let's talk in that match. Of course I want England to win, but boy, oh boy, what a great story. Team Brazil, Willie Adel.
Yeah, Willie Adel has been talking a lot over the last year about his legacy, and he's bringing 2 more players onto the Pro Tour with him in February at Pro Tour Fate Reforged by virtue of their top 8 finish. And it means a lot to him personally to have an opportunity to win the World Magic Cup for Brazil. He's always talking about how he can advance Magic in his country, and this was a very emotional moment for him.
Yeah, I saw him say that this was the happiest day of his Magic life.
Yeah.
This is a guy with 4 Pro Tour top 8s, but getting 2 more Brazilians qualified for the Pro Tour, going into the top 8, representing his country, this, in his mind, is his biggest accomplishment ever.
Randy, last year, he lost Game 3, Match 3, to jump from the round of 32 to from the round of 16 to the round of top 8. And he said that every single day since he lost that match, every single day up until probably last night, he thought about that match and just getting into the top 8 again.
Incredible. Why don't we focus in on the matchup that is going to define the morning? It is the Slovak Republic against Team USA. And we're going to take a little look at the Slovak Republic team for you. We've got Ivan Floch. There you see them. Mikhail Guldan, the giant on the left of screen. Looks like that's been photoshopped. It really has.
Not a trick of perspective. That is actually just gigantic.
I believe it's actually Dr. Guldan, by the way.
Well, if that's what he wants, that's absolutely fine.
He is the only member of the team with a PhD.
Fantastic.
Wow.
So why don't we take a look at what they are playing? And there you see, that's the setup. Randy, what do you like about the decks?
Yeah, it's interesting. They've got the blue-black control in Ivan Floch's hand, so they're trying to feast on the mid-range decks they expected everybody to go, but then Black-Green Constellation, that came straight out of the World Champs from what Team Pantheon played, and then Jeskai Tokens, straight out of the World Champs. That's Yuya Watanabe's deck.
All right, let's take a look at their opponents. It is Team USA. There you see them. Owen Turtenwald, the captain, looking extremely happy, and his teammates Beckstrom, Oliver, and Sears. Are those names going to be BDM names that American Magic fans remember forever in the likes of Black, Cheon, Jacob, Finkel, and co?
I love their chances in this event. I really, I think Owen has had a tremendous influence on them. I mean, Neil Oliver, obviously, as we talked about, already a very successful player, but, you can watch Sears and Beckstrom just sort of soaking up the experience and, really getting stronger as the tournament's gone along. They got off to a little bit of a rocky start, and they had to fight their way uphill through both rounds of pool play, and I think they're stronger for it.
Let's take a look at the decks that USA will be brandishing in the feature match area. There's the team. Let's move to their decks for you, and we'll see what the 3 configuration is going to be. There we are. Andy Beckstrom with Blue-White Heroic, Black-Green Constellation for Owen, and Jeskai Tokens for Neil. Randy, does it look like this matches up well for USA?
Yeah, we watched the US play the Slovak Republic yesterday. That was the one where Owen had the sort of blistering, almost ran out of time, just barely managed to win in the end. But they've got the edge in 2 of these 3 matchups. So it is, I think, edge Team USA on the decks.
All right. Those are the decks, those are the players, but now it's time for the cards. Welcome to day 5 of Worlds Week. Welcome to the quarterfinals of the World Magic Cup, and a welcome on this Super Sunday of Magic to Marshall Sutcliffe and Ben Stark.
Hello and welcome to the booth here in Nice, France. Marshall Sutcliffe with Ben Stark, and we are very happy and even honored to bring you what is going to be a fantastic day of the highest level Magic. We're starting things off with the World Magic Cup, and the players are ready to go. Let's head down to the feature match area for our first round. Hello and welcome to coverage of the World Magic Cup. We are in Nice, France. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Hall of Famer Ben Stark. It's been a long road here, Ben, but we are finally ready to start action. Team USA versus Team Slovak Republic. You get a look at Andrew Beckstrom. We're going to start on that match. There's 3 matches happening in the feature match area here. Andrew Beckstrom on white-blue heroic. He's going to play against Jan Tomkani. You get a look at Jan there. He's on Jeskai token. So we're going to start off on this match. Quick update, we've also got Owen Turtenwald versus Michael Guldan and Neil Oliver versus Ivan Flock, all in our feature match area. This is a team event. 3 players are playing per team, plus there's 1 additional player who will be acting as a coach or advisor in between, kind of bouncing between matches. But Ben, how do you see this match going? This is white-blue for the United States versus Jeskai tokens for Slovak Republic.
Well, it's definitely a close matchup. This Jeskai Tokens deck, was kind of invented by Yuya for Worlds, so it's kind of a brand new deck. So I don't think anybody's too sure how the matchup's even going to go.
Yeah, we've got a fairly new deck to the scene here, and it's going to be interesting. Now, safe assumption these teams have been testing these matchups.
Yeah, I'm sure they have.
Last night.
Yeah.
So they should have probably the better idea out of almost anybody how it's going to go.
Well, the blue-white heroic deck is, trying to put out a couple creatures and make them really big with a bunch of enchantments. The Jeskai Tokens deck is kind of trying to go wide. It wants to put out a lot of tokens and use Jeskai Ascendancy and Treasure Cruise to really pump them up. So they kind of have completely different game plans.
Yeah, it does feel like they're kind of at odds with what each other's trying to do. Now, one thing you'll see from the white-blue heroic as well is that it attempts to not let you interact with the creatures via protecting them through a bunch of different instant speed spells that give the creature protection from a color or make it too big to get burned out.
And those should all be pretty effective because the Jeskai deck's ways to interact are Lightning Strike, Stoke the Flames, a couple Jeskai Charms, pretty much all ways that target a creature.
And here's an Aqueous form on the hero of Iroas. Flooded Strand getting cracked here as well. So the hero grows a little bit, gets a +1/+1 counter thanks to the heroic ability. And you can see what Aqueous form does. Not a card that we've seen get much play in standard.
No.
Sometimes got play in limited. Decent limited card on a good day. But it seems to have found a home here in standard. It makes the creature unblockable. That's the huge upside. And wow, speaking of huge upside, what a great start for Beckstrom. He's also got Ordeal of Thassa here, which he gets to play for 1 cheaper thanks to the static ability of Hero of Iroas. And this is going to allow a massive attack for him here and draw 2 cards. Plus, he has a plane sitting there representing something like maybe a God's Willing.
And assuming he has the God's Willing, this is exactly where he wants to be.
I think he just drew one if he didn't have it before that.
Generally, people think that Mardu has a better matchup than Jeskai against Blue-White Heroic because of Crackling Doom. But since all of Jeskai's decks, cards have to target, God's Willing and Feat of Resistance are really effective at protecting Heroic's creatures.
So raise the alarm on end step there for Jan. What were you going to say, Ben?
We can see that Andrew Backstrom has 2 Feat of Resistance and 4 God's Willing.
16. Jsem si nepodělal ještě žádnou znezem a už jsem 3 poslal do prdele z krajiny, hej. 3 som poslal preč a 4 som
And if you look at Jan Tomkani's hand, you see there's not much he can do. He's got one of his removal spells, Stoke the Flames, but the hero's already a 5/5.
Right. It also can't be blocked, so the game plan of chumping with tokens isn't going to come into play this game. The question is just, can Andrew Bäckström close the door quick enough on Jan Tomkani to pick up the first game? I mentioned it a minute ago, but in our middle table, we have Owen Turtenwald versus Mikhail Gul'dan. They're both actually on the same type of deck, black-green constellation, very similar lists. And at the far end of the table, Neil Oliver is playing Jeskai tokens himself. He's up against Ivan Flock playing, maybe his signature deck, blue-black control. I guess blue-white's probably his signature, but he loves those slow controlling decks, and he certainly knows how to pilot them. We're going to be keeping an eye, of course, on those matches as we go as well. And here's Heliod's Pilgrim, Ben.
Another card that saw a little bit more limited play than standard play.
Absolutely. Not a bad little card, though.
It's a card that LSV referred to as Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, I heard him say that. It's perhaps hyperbolic. It does have some similarities with it. And it looks like he is going to dig up an Ordeal of Heliod, another card that I just didn't think we would see play in standard, but here it is.
It's interesting because with the God's Willing in his hand, I'd be inclined not to cast that here. Even though Jan only has 2 Jeskai charms, that is one of the few ways that he could win this game.
It does seem unnecessarily risky, and I think Andrew Bäckström agrees there. He's going to get a scry from the Aquios form trigger, but he does not play it. This is going to signal to Jan Tomkani that he's either bluffing it or that he has it, and more likely that he has it.
Yeah, and Jan pretty much knows he has a God's Willing or Feat of Resistance here. The problem is Jan doesn't have any sweepers in the main deck. Jan's removal all targets, so there's not really a whole lot he can do here. Jan's plan to stop big creatures is generally to block them with tokens or to Jeskai charm them, and he's not going to be able to do either of those, so he's really in a rough spot right now. After sideboard, he might have some more options. We can see that he has 2 Anger of the Gods, 3 End Hostilities, 3 Glare of Heresy in his sideboard. So he will have better ways to target and remove Andrew's creatures. But for right now, I think Jan's back is really to the wall.
It absolutely is. Now, Andrew right now is certainly representing that he has God's Willing. And he certainly does have it, as we can see on the screen there.
Yeah, if he didn't have it, I'm pretty sure he would have cast the Ordeal last turn. So I think Jan knows that he has it. I don't think Jan can do anything with that information,
It just doesn't change it, though, right? It's just something that he has to accept. Jan's trying to figure out a way. Now, one thing I have seen from this tokens deck is that it does have the ability to do much larger chunks of damage than it initially seems, but I've only seen it do that when it actually has the Ascendancy in play.
Right. It can go big with Jeskai Ascendancy, but Jan just doesn't have access to that right now.
Yeah, it looks like this could be a quick one for the United States picking up game 1. The way that this works, of course, is that all 3 matches are playing. The first team to win 2 of their matches wins the entire match for their country. So a game win here basically would just be a good start for the United States.
Sure, 16.
But not much more. Long way to go before you actually win a match here at the World Magic Cup. All right, and here's the Ordeal. Now, again, it's only going to cost 1 because of Hero of Erois. It has an ability that says auras that target it cost 1 less to cast.
And that's why it's so clear, even to Jan, that Andrew has the God's Willing or Feat. Because,
he actually didn't leave up Feat last time.
Right, specifically God's Willing. Because he could have cast the Ordeal last turn, and he chose not to, and instead left up exactly 1 planes, so he's representing God's Willing.
That's right. Now, is Andrew considering whether he wants to just go for a win here? I mean, what is he? He's attacking for 7. Going to gain 10 life.
Well, if he has Feat and God's Willing in hand, he probably will go for the win, because Jan really can't do 2 Jeskai Charms here, and Jeskai Charm is pretty much the only card he could use here that would be relevant.
So walk us through it. So you fire 1 off, name a color.
Right, and then if he responds with Jeskai Charm, you name the other. You fire specifically the Feat off, because that gives it +2, taking it to 9, which is where it needs to be. And then Jan would have to Jeskai Charm, and then you still have the God's Willing to stop that.
There you go.
If you use the God's Willing, that would only take it to 8, so then that wouldn't really work.
Right. All right, well, he didn't have that play, though. He attacks in, and it looks like, yeah, Jan has now conceded the game, and United States takes game 1. Andrew Bäckström with Blue-White Heroic has put the U.S. on the scoreboard here. All right, why don't we jump up to the far table on your screen there? Ivan Flock versus Neil Oliver. Now this matchup features one of the decks that we just saw, Ben. It is Jeskai tokens in the hand of Neil Oliver. He's playing against a much different opponent, though. Ivan Flock has blue-black control, and it looks like he's already got a Pearl Lake Ancient on the battlefield as well.
Yeah, almost a directly opposite deck from Blue-White Heroic. Blue-Black Control, the most controlling deck that's commonly played in this format. Blue-White Heroic, one of the most aggressive. So this matchup could have a completely different dynamic. It appears like right now, Ivan's trying to decide whether to bounce Pearl Lake Ancient by returning 3 lands, or to let the Jeskai Charm put it back on top of his library. And it looks like he chose to return the 3 lands to bounce it to his hand. So
this is going to be a lot of damage, Ben. That was a Jeskai Charm and a Lightning Strike targeting Ivan there, and so that's going to be at least 2 triggers.
Right, and the Seeker has prowess already, so I think that's lethal.
That was actually lethal there. So Neil Oliver picks up a game as well. Right when we jump in, we see the Pearl Lake Ancient jump back into the hand of Ivan Flock, which clears the way for the kill. So United States up 2 games early here over the Slovak Republic. You get a look, big coverage fans will see Matej Zadelkai sitting there in the middle. He's sitting next to Mikhail Goldan, and he's actually coaching him. He's helping him play the match, as Big Z, as he's known, is not actually playing in this part.
Yeah, I mean, that's the strategy that the Slovak Republic went with. They had probably their second best player and, a top pro, roughly equivalent to Ivan Flock, to sit out to be able to help and coach, the 2 less experienced players. Whereas by contrast, USA has their 2 more experienced players, Neil Oliver and Owen Turtenwald, both playing. So kind of opposite approaches to the team strategy here. I think now we're seeing a mirror match. Owen Turtenwald and Mikhail Goldan on Black-Green Constellation, a deck that I know Owen loved, that all of PGO, Owen, Huey, and Reed ran in Worlds, and then they chose to run right back here. Taking a look at their deck lists, they're very similar.
A virtual mirror match here, Ben?
Yeah. There's very subtle differences. Owen has 2 Commune with the Gods. Mikhail has 3. But, I mean, for the most part, basically the exact same deck. 3 Hornet Queen, 3 Doomwake Giant. A lot of the same numbers in both of these decks. They both have 2 Farika, which I know is one of the best cards in these mirrors. You see one in play for McCall. Owen looks to have a little bit more going on, though, so I would suspect this game favors Owen a little bit.
Do you think the match favors Owen a little bit?
Well, I think the matchup's pretty much a mirror, but with Owen, probably being the best player of, the 8 available in this match, and McCall maybe being one of the lesser experienced players, of course you have to take Owen.
I mean, Owen might be the best player of the players available in the world. He is currently number 1. And, it doesn't necessarily mean, but it means he's been playing really, really well lately.
Yeah, I mean, in this day and age of Magic, I don't feel like we have a clear number 1, like back when it was Kai Bude or John Finkel. But I feel like it's a very short list of people in the debate for who's the best player in the world. And Owen is definitely in that debate. And this is a fun one. I mean, just look at the battlefield here. You got Doomwake Giant, 3 Courser of Crufix in play, Whip, Farika. These players have access to all different kinds of resources. These games are very grindy. They have a lot of different options. This is the kind of match that, I love to play.
You want as many variables as possible.
I mean, just look at the battlefield right now.
I know, I looked up and I had to look away for a moment because I was overwhelmed. This is just insane.
With Whip's ability to gain life, you can have some really sweet, really long, really grindy games. So with McCall choosing to cast that Satar Wayfinder, I wonder if he might have a Whip in hand. Whip is one of the best cards, and it was his top card, but he just chose to send it to the graveyard by looking at the top 4 cards. With the Wayfinder, being able to put a land into his hand, but the other 3 go to the yard. So if I were Owen, that would make me believe that McCall probably has a Whip in hand. Whip is amazing, but you can only have 1 in play. It's legendary. So you probably wouldn't mill it unless you had another one in your hand.
Right. I've got some updates coming in here as well, Ben. I want to keep people apprised of what's going on, not only on the match that we're watching, USA versus Slovak Republic, but also on our other matches. And I've got one match win already. England is up a match over in Brazil. That was David Inglis defeating Thiago Saporito 2-0 to give England a 1-0 match lead.
Well, that was fast. You see McCall kind of going off here. Eidolon of Blossoms lets you draw a card whenever an enchantment comes into play, and Farika makes 1/1 enchantment creatures. So basically, McCall is paying 2 mana now to get a 1/1 Death Touch and draw a card. Owen's going to have to put an end to this quickly if this game is going to stay close. The good thing for Owen is that he should be able to, because all he has to do is get an enchantment into play on his turn, and his Doomwake Giant should be able to take care of some of that. I mean, he does need to actually get 2 enchantments into play, I guess, to be able to kill the Eidolon. He can probably do that, but not definitely. He doesn't seem to have too many cards in his hand.
Speaking of updates, I've got another one. We have our first team through. Yes, already.
Didn't we just start?
2-0. We did. We just started 2-0 for Denmark. They have defeated Serbia to advance. So congratulations to Denmark. They're into the next round, and they can probably go get a sandwich or something because they're going to have a lot of time here. That was quick.
And we see, in response to Owen activating the whip, McCall used Farika on whatever Owen targeted to exile it, so it doesn't get to come into play. And instead, Owen gets just a 1/1 Death Touch enchantment creature. But that will still trigger his Doomwake Giant. So he needs to be able to play 1 more enchantment here to be able to take care of that Eidolon of Blossoms and stop McCall's combo. If he lets McCall on tap with Farika Eidolon of Blossoms, this could get really, really bad for Owen. And you see, he plays another whip, which does almost nothing because only 1 can stay in play. It comes into play and goes right to the yard, but it's a second trigger for Doomwake Giant, so it does kill the Eidolon of Blossoms and stop McCall from drawing who knows how many cards on his next turn.
That's a sweet play.
Yeah.
He's also getting in for an attack here.
Yeah, not that bad a spot for Owen.
Another match, Panagiotis has won a match for Greece in their match versus South Korea. So the updates are coming in furiously here now as we have Denmark through, Brazil and England still battling, Greece and South Korea still battling, and of course USA versus Slovak Republic here still in the midst of a fight.
And you see,
sorry, Ben, this is game 1, by the way, Owen Turnwald versus Mikhail Gul'dan. Go ahead, Ben.
you really see the advantage of Courser. Sometimes that's one of those cards that's very powerful, but it's subtle. It doesn't win the game. You know, it doesn't look like it won the game.
It's not that over-the-top
Right,
card.
but in reality, you know, it's going a long way towards winning the game because this game is going long, turn after turn after turn. Instead of drawing land, McCall is putting the lands from the top of his library into play, which greatly increases the chances he'll draw a spell every turn.
On the match that we first started on, Andrew Beckstrom versus Jan Tomkani. Tomkani is on a mulligan to 5. You can see it on the upper right part of your screen there. So not good news for Team Slovak Republic. Remember, Beckstrom's already up a game in that match as well.
Good news for Team USA.
That is correct. If you're rooting for the U.S. at home, that is a good sign.
You've been to this tournament a few times before?
We won in 2010.
2010.
Yeah, but it wasn't the World Cup back then. It was
Just Worlds. Yeah, it was the side thing.
And watching this game, I have no idea who's going to win.
Yeah, this is one of those things where even the players themselves have to take each turn as they come because things change so dramatically from turn to turn. And Owen currently tapped out. He's got one blocker. Like there's not. He just sort of has to sit here and watch, try to get any information he can from his opponent about what might be in his hand, and hope that he doesn't do anything completely ridiculous.
This is awesome. They both have whip in play.
Yes.
McCall has Farika, which is somewhat of an advantage, but Owen has Doomwake Giant, so he's able to mitigate the damage that Farika can do. They both have Courser, so they're both playing lands from the top of their deck directly into play. And the thing that would really blow this open was if one of them was able to keep an Eidolon around, but neither of them seems to have access to that. So it's McCall with more lands and a few more things going on. But the things going on aren't going to end the game quickly. They aren't overwhelming. If neither player, if they drew the exact same thing for the rest of the game, I think McCall would win. But I don't think this is insurmountable by any means. Looking back at Tomcani and Backstrom, Tomcani on the Multi 5, it's a tough spot, but Backstrom doesn't seem to have that much. He has one Laguna banned Trailblazer and a bunch of ways to target it. So this game could easily come down to whether or not Tomcani has a way to remove it. If he has a Glare of Heresy or something of that nature and can get rid of it, if Backstrom doesn't find another creature, Tomcani might be able to stabilize. If he does have more creatures, he'll probably be at a pretty big advantage against the Mulligan to 5.
How about Defiant Strike?
Yeah, it looks like he's got a couple of those, a couple of Ordeal of Thasas. So a good hand, but not necessarily backup creatures.
And our main big picture match here, still a slew of permanents. This matchup is highly skill intensive. So many things to consider.
Yeah. When Owen Turtenwald is thinking that there's a lot going on in a game, because he processes so much so fast. Backstrom right now drawing 2 cards, and if he finds a Plains, it looks like he found a God's Willing, so he'll be in really good shape to be able to protect his creature. If he did not find a Plains, it will come down to whether Tomcani does find a Plains, because I see Tomcani is holding that Glare of Heresy, but he can't cast it because he only has blue and red mana. And it looks like Backstrom chooses to tap out knowing that Tomcani can't cast his Glare of Heresy. And even though he'd rather keep the big one in play, he drew a second Laguna Pen Trailblazer. So even if he draws the Plains to Glare the first one, I think Backstrom with plenty of cards in hand now can just go to work making the second one big. So, Backstrom really in a commanding position in this game, I think. It might look...
In this game?
Yes, it might look pretty close on board, but knowing that Tomcani doesn't have access to white mana and that Backstrom now has 2 creatures, so removing one won't really, destroy him, I think that, he's an overwhelming favorite right now. Unfortunately, in this Owen Turtenwald match, I cannot tell you who's an overwhelming favorite because there are just way too many things at play.
And we've seen huge swings, too. We saw this match yesterday as well when these teams played each other. In a really exciting finish due to clock considerations, Owen Turtenwald had to play really, really quickly and also had to have some things go right for him as far as the draw steps and mulligans from Gul'dan, and he did. He not only played quickly, but those mulligans and draw steps kind of came through for Owen, and he was able to pick up the match in just a couple of minutes. That's obviously not going to be the case here, as this is game 1 still.
Yeah. And what you see happening in the Backstrom-Jan Tomcani match.
So up in the upper right-hand side.
In the upper right-hand side. Since Tomcani can't really remove the creatures, he's choosing to go wide. He played a Hordling Outburst. He's got a really big Rabblemaster that's going to have to be blocked almost every turn for the rest of the game now. So Backstrom's going to have to kill him very quickly. Luckily for Backstrom, that's exactly what his deck wants to do.
Yes, he is well suited to do that. Another update here. South Korea versus Greece, they're tied at 1 match apiece. England versus Brazil still favors England 1-0 currently.
And you see in the front match here, Owen and McCall, the life totals swing back and forth almost every turn. That's
Yes.
because whip gives all creatures lifelink, and both players have a whip in play. So you might see 30-9 and think, oh, McCall's really pulling away with it. Then after Owen's turn, suddenly it's 24-15 again. And I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth like that turn after turn, with the players not really that worried about the life totals, because most likely not going to be able to kill somebody in one attack when the other person's gaining life on their turn. What the players are trying to do is really grind ahead with resources. If somebody can get extra cards, get an Eidolon Blossoms going, get multiple Doomwake Giants in play to the point where they can kill off a lot of their opponent's creatures, this is what they're digging for. This is what they're like trying to accomplish.
Okay, so we'll see who can get it. Another update from our other matches. There's a decider being played, South Korea versus Greece. South Korea's up a game in that decider. Rosa Chaos versus Ju-Hoon Oh, and Oh is up a game in that decider. So I'm sure it's very intense over there, as it is here in our feature match area. Every single game counts. What do you see happening in the upper right in the Beckstrom versus Tom Connie game there, Ben? Is it still the same scenario? It looks like players are kind of conferring.
Well, Tom Connie did draw the planes, so now he has access to a Glare of Heresy. Backstrom has a bunch of cards in hand and some mana open, so I can see he has God's Willing. So most likely, he's going to protect his creatures here from Tom Connie's removal. He is going to have to chump that Rabble Master, unless he wants to use his second God's Willing on it, and he does have 2. And then he's going to have to try and deal 9 to Tom Connie on his next turn.
Wow.
Yeah, I think he probably can, but it's pretty close.
This is insane.
Yeah.
Look at all those goblins.
Yeah, and he's at 13, so he can take the hit from all those 1/1s. But I don't know if he can take the hit from the Rabble Master, and he definitely can't take 2 hits from that Rabble Master. So he does need to be producing blockers.
Yeah, I think it's actually exactly lethal, right? With the extra token. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
13.
and it's 8, yeah.
Yeah, but
So
he
it's
could
actually
block
14.
1/1/1, and then it would only be 12. The thing is, he would never be able to block all the goblins on the following turn, so he would have to deal the final 9 to Tom Connie on his turn.
Now, he also could have a card like Ordeal of Heliod, which could gain him 10 life, though with the amount of damage that Tom Connie's capable of dealing, I don't know if 10's going to be enough.
Right. I mean, can we maybe make out...
Oh.
What's up?
So he only attacks with the tokens?
Yeah, that's an interesting play. It's possible that it's exactly lethal with the second Laguna Band Trailblazer, so he needed to hold back a blocker. I can't really see the die, because that's the second match we're looking at right now, to be able to tell if it's exactly lethal. I think with a Defiant Strike and an Ordeal of Thassa in Backstrom's hand, he's probably going to have 9 here, but he easily might be 1 or 2 short of ending the game. Oh, there's your card.
There it is. Ordeal of Heliod hits.
And now, even if it's not lethal, with the extra 10 life, it's going to be very difficult for Tom Connie.
I think it is lethal because that's a Defiant Strike, which is going to get a counter +1/+1, so that's 6, 7, 8, and here's a trigger to make it 9, and the hand is extended. Andrew Beckstrom.
And that was exactly lethal. Look how close that was.
Wow. Andrew Beckstrom wins the match for the United States, so U.S. up 1 match over the Slovak Republic here. That's a huge win. You can see Isaac Sears helping out as well, and Yam Tomkani O2. So let's go big picture on our middle match here. You guys are familiar with this one. It's Owen Turtenwald. It's Mikhail Goldan. Dr. Goldan, as we found out.
Oh, congratulations to him.
Yeah, that is a massive accomplishment. He's looking to add another massive accomplishment to his resume, being a World Magic Cup champion.
And I don't know if he's going to do that or not, but I think he is going to be the champion of this game, most likely. Not only do we see the life total way in his favor now, but we see that he's got a lot of mana untapped on this turn with Doomwake Giant and Farika.
And Owen's got nothing.
And Owen's kind of been whittled down. So I think that Mikhail will either be able to win the game this turn or at least put it really far out of reach for Owen. Assuming he has a couple creatures in that graveyard to bring back with Farika, and each one will trigger the Doomwake Giant, So he's really going to be able to clear away Owen's board, or at least make Owen's creatures much smaller. And if they don't have much power, they can't. That means Owen won't be gaining life with the life link because they won't be dealing much damage. And you can already see the life totals are way in McCall's favor now. So I have a feeling that this turn is really. He might not deal lethal this turn, but this turn is really going to put McCall in a position to close out this game.
Okay, another update: England versus Brazil. England is through. Fabrizio Anteri wins his match 2-1, making Willie Adel's match not relevant. England joins Denmark in the next round.
That's disappointing for Team Brazil. They're definitely one of the stronger teams that advanced to the top 8 of this World Magic Cup.
Yes.
Led by Willie Adel with 4 Pro Tour top 8s, and Thiago Saporito, who plays a ton of Magic Online. Belovo on there, one of the top players on Magic Online. And we see McCall did have lethal this turn. I think he was able to bring into play 4 enchantments and clear out Owen's board, 3 or 4 enchantments, and attack with everything and deal Owen the final points of damage.
Okay, so that puts Mikhail Gul'dan up a game over Owen Turtenwald. Last we saw our Table C match. That's the far one that you see Isaac Sear sitting down at. That's Neil Oliver versus Yvonne Floch. Last we saw that, Neil Oliver was up a game. So it looks like we're heading into game 2 here. And if you have a chance to look at the deck list there, Ben, how does this play out post-sideboard in your estimation for Jeskai tokens, which is what Neil Oliver's playing, or blue-black control in the deft hands of Yvonne Floch?
I actually don't think it changes much from the Game 1 match. Looking at their sideboards, for Neil, it's Anger of the Gods, Elspeth, 2 Magma Spray, 4 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Erase, 3 End Hostilities, 2 Glare of Heresy. Not many of those cards seem that effective against blue-black control. He may want a couple Disdainful Strokes. I don't know. He probably doesn't want all 4. They have the potential to get stranded with not that many real targets. He doesn't have many cards in the main that are really that bad. The burn spells are pretty good for burning them out. You need your creatures because they have removal. Card drawing is always good. For Yvonne, his sideboard is Drown in Sorrow, Farika's Cure, Grind Clock, Jerubi, Murklurker, Aether Spouts, Disdainful Stroke, Prognostic Sphinx, and 3 Negate. I like the negates a lot. Almost all of Neil's cards are non-creatures because he basically makes creatures by casting instants and sorceries that put tokens into play.
Right.
So I think Yvonne gains maybe a few percentage points there with the negates, but it's not like he has any dead cards in his main or anything either. So, he'll be boarding out one of his weaker cards. Maybe Despise isn't great in the matchup. Hero's Downfall is probably not great in the matchup. And he'll just be bringing in some cards that are a little bit better in maybe Prognostic Sphinx, Negate, Disdainful Stroke. So I think Yvonne gains over Neil after sideboard, but it's not like he has these silver bullets that beat Neil's deck. He just gets to replace a few of his weaker cards with a few cards that will probably perform a little bit better.
Okay, looks like a nice start here for Oliver. He has an end step, Raise the Alarm, to get a couple of tokens going. And, I've played quite a few control decks like the one that Floch is playing in, and when they can cast their threats at instant speed or when their threats all have haste, it's really annoying for a deck like that.
Absolutely, because you want them to play things during their turn so you can counter or remove them and just keep things even and get to the late game where you generally have a better late game than your opponent.
Right, and this way, Neil can force counter spells and sneak through other things. And here's Jeskai Ascendancy. He's just going to test the waters here, and I think the waters are clear.
And
yes, they are.
I love this play. Players are always too hesitant to run things like this out there. Yvonne could have a counter, but if he does, it's just a 1-for-1. If he does not, then Neil will start to gain an advantage for the rest of the game because Yvonne really can't remove that. He's got Perilous Vault, but that's really slow and very committing. And other than that, if he has to tap out main phase to do it, if that stays in play, every time Neil casts a spell, he gets to draw and discard now, which could be a huge advantage in finding his best cards and sculpting the perfect hand.
I like that play. You see that Jan has popped over to sit next to Yvonne.
I always talk about, you don't just put cards in your opponent's hand. Neil didn't know that Yvonne didn't have a counter, but he knows that Yvonne could not have a counter.
Right.
And if he runs the Jeskai Ascendancy and gets countered, he doesn't lose the game, but he would prefer it to resolve by a lot. If he runs it and Yvonne doesn't have a counter, now he's going to be at a big advantage in this game.
And what are even the counters that he's worried about? Is it like negate?
Negate and dissolve.
And dissolve are the other ones. Okay.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, though, Neil Oliver has added to his board again. The 2 Raise the Alarm tokens got bio-blighted, but immediately back again, Hordling Outburst bringing 3 goblins, and I think those are going to get Drowned in Sorrow here. But again, you mentioned it a minute ago, Ben, this isn't even that bad for Neil, right? I mean, he doesn't want to have his goblins go away. Ooh, does he have a response? He's got Stoke the Flame. So he's going to... He's going to just use his mana efficiently, essentially, here.
There's nothing wrong with that play, but it's not a big deal because the tokens are still going to die.
Yeah, they still die. But even as it stands, it's a 1-1. It's a 1-for-1, excuse me. Flock gets to take out the tokens made from the Horleen Outburst, but Neil Oliver is slowly generating advantage off of the Jeskai Ascendancy by drawing and discarding. We see a land in his graveyard there. That could have been any other spell, and boom, there's Treasure Cruise off the top.
I was just about to say, I think the reason he made that play is because he really wanted to find a Treasure Cruise. With all the ability to cycle all the cards he plays now, every time he casts a spell, he gets to draw one, discard one. Treasure Cruise is what he's really looking for.
And this is so nice because Neil Oliver had the perfect threat in Goblin Rabblemaster, with which Flock wants to kill before combat. That left him just enough to fire off the Treasure Cruise for full value here.
And he's drawing a land, discarding it. He'll almost certainly discard Shivan Reef here. I don't know. Yeah. What there would be to think about, because drawing 3 more cards, even if he wants to make his land drop, you assume you'll probably find 1 in 3 cards.
Yeah, I think he was just double checking with his teammates.
Which is smart, obviously, when you have other great players to talk to. And now you see, so they're 1-for-1ing a lot, and Neil just drew 3 cards.
Yes.
And he's got massive card selection with the Jeskai Ascendancy to help find that Treasure Cruise.
Flock has to be a little jealous when his opponent's the one casting the big card draw spells.
Treasure Cruise.
Yeah, Treasure Cruise. Now, Flock does have a big card draw spell, though. He has a dig through time in his hand, I do believe. Let's take a look.
Yeah, it looked pretty clear that he did.
Yeah, so there's a dig through time. So he is going to be able to find a pair of answers here, maybe even some more card draw of his own, but will it be too late is a question, as Oliver has a stacked hand now.
Well, yeah, the problem is I'm sure Yvonne can find answers with dig through time, to the next couple threats Neil's going to play. The problem is that Neil's going to keep drawing 1 and discarding 1, basically allowing him to work through all his lands, and every spell he plays is going to then be something useful. He's going to have no real cards where they're just not effective, and he just has a bad draw for the turn. That's huge if a game is going long.
Yeah, you'll notice that too. You'll see Flock draw a land occasionally, which he kind of wants to. These control decks love to have as many lands as they can get on the battlefield, but those are just not the same level of power draw steps when you get to loot every turn.
Looting is the kind of thing, if the game's going to end quick, it's not a big deal if your opponent loots once or twice, but if a game goes long, it's almost insurmountable.
Now, I do have a question for you here, Ben. I see that in Oliver's hand, you can see he's got a Jeskai Ascendancy there. How important is the second one? Does he hold that? Does he play it?
Well, it depends, because the only way Yvonne can remove them is Perilous Vault. So if he ends up in a position where when he plays that, Yvonne can resolve a Perilous Vault, that would be devastating to Neil. If he would lose, any tokens that he hadn't played plus both Ascendancies. But if he ends up in a position where if Yvonne goes for Perilous Vault, he knows he can counter it, or he knows he can just end the game with all the +1/+1ing from the Ascendancies, then he can play the second Ascendancy.
Okay, so those are the factors that Oliver's going to have to consider when the time comes for that. Meanwhile, Yvonne Flock is resolving the dig through time that we saw in his hand a moment ago. So those are not cards in hand. He's just trying to decide which 2 of those 7 he wants to keep.
Yeah, and interestingly, I don't think Yvonne's seen a Perilous Vault yet, and he's seen a lot of cards. There's some chance he would board some or all of them out because it doesn't seem amazing in the matchup.
It does seem woefully slow.
Right. Personally, I would think I would rather have at least some of them than some spot removal. Bioblade is very good because it clears a lot of tokens, but Despise and Hero's Downfall don't seem great to me. But it's entirely possible that Yvonne boarded some or all of them out. It wouldn't shock me.
So Flock's hand, not amazing here. He's got Drown in Sorrow, Hero's Downfall, Jace's Ingenuity, and only 2 mana up. So the coast is relatively clear here for Neil Oliver. And he's going to start things off with the Goblin Rabblemaster, which resolves.
Oh, wow. So even can't even interact on this turn?
No, he cannot. He's got 2 3-mana spells and a 5-mana spell with only 2 mana up.
Yvonne is in trouble. He's just in trouble.
Is the long game for Neil Oliver burn spells? Is that ultimately how it ends up going?
Yeah, the long game for him is, as we've talked about several times, Jeskai Ascendancy. Every time
but, how does he actually win, right? Ascendancy itself won't win the game. Is it finding more burn spells to kill Yvonne with? Is it just generating so many actual spells in hand that he just overwhelms Yvonne?
Yeah, it's really just keep generating spells. He's gaining an advantage all over the place here. Like you see, Ivan's probably going to go for Drown in Sorrow now, and Neil is going to be able to save the Rabble Master just by casting a spell and using Ascendancy's ability. He doesn't mind. He'll just lose the 1/1 token, but the Rabble Master's not dying. The Lightning Strike is almost cycling because Neil will be able to draw a card and discard a card and keep, the more effective spells.
Yeah, now he's discarding actual spells, so Flock knows that he's got all spells in hand.
Yeah, and Ivan Flock did not cast that Drown in Sorrow hoping to kill that 1/1 token.
No.
He's trying to kill a Rabble Master, and, he's not succeeding due to the strength of Jeskai Ascendancy.
He finds a Disdainful Stroke, which could hit the Stoke the Flames that Neil Oliver has in his hand, but the Stoke the Flames is just one of now 4 spells, Jeskai Ascendancy and a pair of Raise the Alarms as well.
Yeah, and he does have access to Jace's Ingenuity to draw 3 cards and Hero's Downfall to take out that Goblin Rabble Master. So Neil with a clear advantage. But Ivan is going to see some cards, and he's not dying just yet. Definitely a winnable game for Ivan, but I would rather be on Neil's side of the board.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Flock's life total here, right? And while they're having a pretty even fight as far as cards go on the battlefield, Flock's life total is down to 10.
Well, right, but
Oliver already has a burn spell for 4 in his hand. He's got 2 instant speed ways to make creatures. Like, it feels like it doesn't take much more to get Ivan Flock from 10 to 0 here with a few more card draws from Neil.
Right, it doesn't take much, but Ivan's deck isn't really dealing damage. It's the kind of deck that kind of builds a big advantage through cards and powerful late game.
Yeah.
So you can't really look at both players' life totals that much, but as you were saying, you're really just saying Ivan is within reach, maybe.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying, is that Ivan Flock is down to 10 here. And I'm just wondering if he's going to have the time to set up. Here's the second Jeskai Ascendancy for Neil Oliver. Trigger the first one. Treasure Cruise.
I mean, Ivan isn't going to take any damage this turn. He's definitely going to Hero's Downfall that Rabble Master. So I don't see him getting burnt out from 10 too quickly. It might happen over the long game if that Treasure Cruise resolves and things like that.
Okay, so but that probably isn't the way we're going to see this game end?
No, I think what will happen is Neil will raise the alarm either right now or end of Ivan's turn. Well, for sure he's going to do one or the other. It's a close play between them. I guess he's going with right now. Oh, you have to kill the Rabble Master pre-combat, so he's
yes,
still,
So he gets to cruise
He
here.
gets to cruise, yeah, then that's a better play for sure.
He finds another Rabble Master, and he is going to have a perfectly sculpted hand after this Treasure Cruise. He discards the Rabble Master. That was the loot. This is the second loot. He finds Chandra Pyromaster. How important is that card here?
Not terribly important. I mean, it's a good card. All 3 of these are close as far as what you discard, I think. I don't think he'll discard the Raise the Alarm because it's cheap and it'll allow him to do 2 things in one turn. I could definitely see him discarding either the Stoke or the Chandra.
All right, it was Chandra down, and now the Treasure Cruise resolved, so the coast was clear, and here's, looks like a Seeker, a land, and a Jeskai Charm. I mean, he has 8 damage in his hand right now.
Right, and Ivan has Disdainful Stroke that can possibly counter Stoke, but if he has to use that on Stoke, that's just another 1-for-1 that's favoring Neil. You see Neil upping cards now pretty substantially. Ivan can close that card disadvantage gap with Jace's Ingenuity, but he's still going to have to keep answering everything, and with Neil's ability to loot twice now, every time he casts a spell, that advantage, it's just grind.
That's the feel, too. I mean, he is just grinding card advantage out. Now, I want to remind you that Andrew Beckstrom, who you see sitting to Neil Oliver's left, has already won his match. The United States is up a match here. Owen Turtenwald's down a game in his. He's on the middle table there versus Michael Gul'dan. But if Neil Oliver can close this thing out, the United States is through to the next round. As far as our last outstanding match, so England is through, Denmark is through, South Korea versus Greece is still happening. They're tied at a match apiece. And it seems that things have slowed down a little bit there, but they're being urged along, and we'll probably have a result from that one before too long as well.
So Ivan can't Thoughtseize the Raise the Alarm because he would die to Jeskai Charm and Stoke if Neil just draws an on-tap land to cast them both.
Oh, geez.
So he's debating which burn spell, I imagine, to take. I mean, I don't think there's a big difference. I think he should take Jeskai Charm because he has Disdainful Stroke for Stoke. He can't cast it now. That's why I said he would die at 8 if he, if he left them both in his hand. But he does have Disdainful Stroke. So assuming that he doesn't get stoked right now, that's the one he'd rather leave in Neil's hand. And Neil draws another Treasure Cruise.
Yes, that would be the third one.
This game was
Fox at 8.
Yeah, it was somewhat close, though Neil was at an advantage 2 turns ago. But now with this additional Treasure Cruise, I think Neil just keeps going up on resources, and he's just grinding Yvonne Flock out of this game.
He certainly is. And here's Raise the Alarm main phase. The coast is clear. Flock has no available mana, I believe. Is there an Urborg in there? All right, he's got 1 black, but shouldn't be too relevant here either. So Raise the Alarm main phase.
So
Neil triggers.
Neil digging, trying to find a second Stoke, because that would end the game right now. In fact, if he finds a land to cast Jeskai Charm and Stoke, that would end the game right now. And he has Jeskai Charm and Stoke. So I think if he finds an untapped land in that second loop, then the game is over.
I think he found an island.
I think that ends the game.
He plays the island, Jeskai Charms for 4. Here it is. He leaves the 2 red mana sources up. Stoke the flames. Target you. Flock falls down to 4. And you can see the
just
mana,
put the Jeskai Charm on.
and there's the Jeskai Charm, and that's going to do it. United States is through. Owen Turtenwald, you can take this round off, buddy.
How would you like to be potentially the best player in the world, and your teammates both won?
I would love that feeling. And I'm sure the United States is. Congratulations to the Slovak Republic for a fantastic finish here as well. They are not going to be able to advance, but an absolutely great top 8 finish there for the Slovak Republic. Welcome back to the booth. That's Ben Stark. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. And we're taking a look at if we can move the last match. It kind of depends on how far they are into it. We can't just, look, tournament integrity is important, right? You can't just walk up and say, hey, everybody, pick up your cards, and we'll just figure it out when we get there. That doesn't work out. But if there is a good time and an opportunity, we want to show you as much Magic as humanly possible, and we will move them if that's an option.
Like if they're going to a Game 3 or something, then they'll start Game 3 on camera.
Exactly. And as an update for that, South Korea versus Greece, so that's the match that we're talking about. South Korea has 1 match win. Greece has 1 match win, and they are playing in that last match right now. Bigger picture perspective on the tournament, England through, they defeat Brazil. Denmark through, Serbia has to go home with the top 8 finish here. And as you just saw on camera, Team United States also through. Looking at the matchups, I mean, it felt to me coming in, Brazil's strong team, but USA and Slovak Republic seem to be the 2 strongest, that leaving just the USA as sort of the pillar.
I don't think anybody would argue that.
Yeah. So the big question here, though, is who's going to make it through from South Korea and Greece? And might be able to get that for you. We might not. We're going to try to scope that out for you here. So once we know that we can get them, and I think we might actually be able to get them in the feature match area 4, which would be fantastic. I love that. So they're on their way now.
Awesome. We get to see maybe the deciding game, the deciding match.
Yeah, which is, I mean, that is the best part, right?
Of course.
When everybody's all huddled around and watching. So that'll be great. I really did find it interesting. Owen Turtenwald didn't even have to win his match. He just got to sit there and shuffle.
And we saw him lose Game 1.
He did. He lost Game 1 to Gul'dan, and what a sigh of relief for Owen.
Yeah, you think of Owen as the captain, clearly the leader of this team, but he got a little help there.
He certainly did, and it has to feel good when, again, the leader doesn't even have to win. And maybe he would have. I mean, he still had 2 games to go as well. So I don't know what the decks are yet that we're going to be seeing. So once we get those, we'll be able to figure them out and give you guys some analysis on that as we move the players over. But for now, let's just take a minute here, Ben, to kind of reflect. So England through.
Okay.
I may or may not have seen somebody from England walk by the booth with a big on the way by. I don't know who it was.
Exciting for England. I mean, Brazil was one of the teams with some notable players, in my opinion, Belovo and Willie Adele. But obviously exciting for England.
Yeah, so that's exciting for England. Now, what about Brazil, though? Tough finish there for Brazil.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if Slovak Republic and USA were 1 and 2 in this top 8 as far as strength, I think Brazil was probably number 3.
All right, so England through, Denmark through, USA through, South Korea versus Greece, and we're going to add another voice to the booth here in the form of somebody who comes from one of these countries. Rich Hagan. Hey, Rich.
Hello there. Yes, I love Brazil very dearly, but I couldn't root for them, obviously, in the quarterfinals. So we had England-Brazil in the quarters. And it was actually very interesting because England got off to a very quick start. They were one up in all 3 matches. By the time, basically, you'd finish shuffling in the feature match area, because obviously it takes a little bit longer to get the guys in the feature match area settled and ready to go. So very quick games, and the big surprise there was that Fabrizio Anteri with blue-black control, I mean, that's never 1-0 up in 5 minutes, but it was here against Gabriel Fair's red-white tokens. And then we had David Inglis with Abzan Whip 1 up over Thiago Saporito with that kind of interesting red-green deck, which is not something you would necessarily see in real standard, but here we are in Team Unified standard. That's part of the answer to the puzzle of where you put the 3 decks. And then Francesco Giorgio with Mardu mid-range was up over Willie Adel's Sidisi Whip. So again, very quickly 1-0 up for England. Game 2s were all about Brazilian aggression. It was right the way across the board. It was like Brazil out the gates, Brazil out the gates, Brazil out the gates. Can England survive and recover in this one? So the answer was Willie Adel got their way through over Francesco Giorgio because basically in the end he was like, yeah, okay, you've made your Elspeth, but I've got enough power to get her off the board eventually. And then he just powered his way through. So that made that one 1-1. Gabriel Fair on the play, of course, with his red-white tokens against the blue-black control, monstered his way through blue-black control. It was like 3 or 4 minutes for that one, and because you know what blue-black control's like. No, it's like there is a tipping point, and there's a place where there's 2 or 3 turns of real interest, and then you either know blue-black control's going to take it down over the next 20 turns,
yes,
or you're done. And the red-white tokens just didn't let him get anywhere near what he would call the mid-game. So that was 1-1. But David Inglis claimed a 2-0 victory over Saporito, and then in the end it was Fabrizio Anteri. It's what we've been saying all week. Anteri with blue-black control got the job done over Gabriel Fair, and that put England into the semi-finals. And you guys have this match to see who faces Team USA.
That's right. So South Korea versus Greece. And it looks like we're getting a decider here.
So it looks like Solvin Caryatid, Elvish Mystic.
That's right. And is this, what is this, Mardu mid-range on the other side?
Yeah.
Is that what you're seeing here, Ben?
Yeah, and probably Black-Green Constellation, like we just saw Owen Turtenwald and Mikhail Guldan playing.
Yeah, that looks about right to me. Marios Angelopoulos for Greece.
Yeah, and I feel more confident in that now because I see an erase in Socrates' hand. That's normally a card you board in against those Black-Green Constellation decks, but not necessarily against a normal Courser Caryatid, let's say Abzan midrange or something like that.
All right, Socrates doesn't have much to do here, though. Just a Scryland and chip the turn back. Hyun, though, has, well, some nice stuff. I mean, he's certainly been able to power out a lot of creatures. I don't know that he's done anything really overwhelming yet here.
Right.
This is kind of where I expect like a Nykthos to show up next turn and start doing some dumb stuff. But there's the erase. That's going to strand that Arbor Colossus still on top of the deck where it was going to be anyway.
The problem for Hyun here is all of his creatures in play aren't doing much.
Yeah.
And this Mardu midrange doesn't just have spot removal, it has board sweepers in the form of end hostilities.
Oh, right.
And he's under virtually no pressure, so he can wait for Hyun to cast another creature, say a creature that really pressures him.
Like the Colossus.
Like the Colossus. And then he's going to get a 4-for-1 when he wipes the board with end hostilities. This is not a good spot for Hyun to be in.
So Hyun has access to cards like Thoughtseize, right?
Sure.
He just hasn't seen one yet.
He has ways to potentially disrupt that.
I do see an end hostilities in hand for Socrates. But I think he might have to fire off a Read the Bones here, as I'm not sure that he has another land. Let's take a look at his hand here. No. Wow, look at that hand. So I think he's going to Read the Bones here, Ben.
To find lands.
Yeah, just to dig strictly for lands. He's got enough action in his hand to last him the rest of the game, no problem.
And Read the Bones sees a lot of cards. So most likely if he casts Read the Bones, he gets to scry 2 and then draw 2. He's going to find a land or two.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, he's just not under that much pressure life total-wise. Sure, he's down to 14. He'll take some more damage next turn, but... Oh, Anger of the Gods is what he decides to do. He's going to just say, you know what, I'll draw those lands in good time. If I'm under absolutely no pressure whatsoever, no problem.
I like that play. If he had land drops to make already, I probably wouldn't. I would probably just wait and end hostilities. But if he had read the bones, he would have went up to 9 cards, found a land, played it, and went to 8, and still had to discard.
And taken 2 more damage, and then 2 more on the other side, too. So he ends up being at about 10 life.
Right, and he was going to take damage whenever he cast Read the Bones, but the key there is the discard, because when lands are a resource, that means everything you have basically is a resource. Like at this point, if he discards a card, that card would have had a positive effect on the game for him.
Right.
Even though he's in a commanding position, he can certainly throw away 1 resource and still be a huge favorite in this game. There's no real reason to do that. You just anger this turn, you can read next turn, and then you never have to discard.
Love it. Nice play there from Socrates. And here is that Arbor Colossus now for Hyun. And Socrates he has any number of ways to deal with it, Crackling Doom being the most obvious.
And yeah, and since he didn't find the land for End Hostilities, I think he would have cast that had he found the land. With Crackling Doom being an instant and End Hostilities taking out the Caryatid as well, I think that would have been a play he would have rather made. This is still, you know, very comfortable for him.
Yeah, he does have the an under end that he can use. He's now pulled a second one. Wow. His hand is just straight up gasoline here. Remember, the players are tied 1-1. The teams are tied 1-1. Whoever wins this game of Magic takes their country into the next round to play against the United States.
Yeah, his hand is really stacked here, but he doesn't have land. That's what he really needs to draw. If he's able to end hostilities into Elspeth with all of that in his hand after he casts the Elspeth, that's going to do it.
I mean, how does this even go wrong for Socrates, though? He has infinite spot removal, and Hyun's deck is basically a a target-making machine.
The way it goes wrong for him is if he doesn't draw land. He's got plenty of time.
But if he just never draws lands over like 5 turns or something?
Right, because 1-for-1ing is not necessarily going to win this game. As you see, Hyun has some cards that replace themselves, some resilient things. So he could definitely win this game if Socrates doesn't find lands.
All right, well, he's not actually going to get to hit, though, with this Nissa Worldwaker because he's actually stuck on lands as well and has a bunch of spells in hand. So Socrates is going to have to deal with 2 permanents here.
He'll probably Utter End the Nissa.
Right, so Utter End Nissa seems like a good start, but that does leave him taking some damage here. And, you know, if Hyun can sort of chain together maybe like another Nissa, if he hits some lands, all right, he did hit a land. There's 4 damage, drop you down to 7.
If Hyun has a creature to drop here, and Socrates doesn't find a land for End Hostilities, he's not going to be able to answer both creatures on his turn with 4 mana.
And there's a creature, Pelucranos World Eater, and that's lethal damage on the board here. So Socrates... Well, let's see. He did find a Chain to the Rocks.
But not a land, so he's only going to be able to really answer one of those 2 creatures this turn. He can get a little bit ahead by Chain and playing Rabblemaster, but he can't actually stop both of the big creatures. If he had drawn a land for End Hostilities, that would have practically been game. He would have wiped out all 3 of Hyun's creatures, had a clear board, and that powerful hand. Now, this is still any man's game.
Interesting. So he's going to take out Pelucranos here and play Rabblemaster. I wonder, right, so he wants to do that so that he can make sure to have at least some type of block if he wants it, as Pelucranos could just eat the Rabblemaster anyway.
In case he doesn't draw the land.
Exactly.
If he does draw the land, he knows he's in such a comfortable position, but if he doesn't, he doesn't want to be in the same position as last turn where he can only do one thing. That, if he wasn't going to draw land, that Chain of the Rocks was one of the better draws he could have, because at least it allowed him to do 2 things.
So Nissa Worldwaker here off the top for Hyun.
But he's a mana short of being able to play it and make a hasted 4/4.
That's right. So he would rather prioritize getting damage in right now and then play Nissa Worldwaker to make another one, though this land draw, this upcoming land draw is getting super important.
It's so big right now. If he draws the land, he's going to be able to attack Nissa and kill it, and then end hostilities and clear the board.
Oh, my goodness.
If he does not draw the land...
He drew it.
Wow.
He is down to 3. He's got to be careful because one of his white mana sources does damage to him. But
well, he'll happily go to 2 to cast this end hostilities.
Yes, he will. Wow, so this worked out at the very last minute for Socrates. As he has just enough damage here to kill Nissa and even get a couple of damage in.
Right, and that's exactly what he's doing. So, and then post-combat, when he ends hostilities, he'll wipe this board. He's at a precarious 2 life, but he'll leave Hyun with only 3 lands.
3 lands in play.
And now that he's got access to 5 mana, and we see, Socrates' hand, his hand is still that loaded hand, with multiple removal, Elspeth, Wingmate Rock.
Wow. What a huge swing for Greece. Hyun is stuck with, like, Hornet Queen and Elvish Mystic in his hand. And he's got a long road back. He does find a land there, but Socrates, even though he's only at 2 life, Hyun doesn't have anything that can just... There's no reach in this deck. So Socrates, he does need to get things moving forward as quickly as possible.
Right, and he doesn't draw land 6 for Elspeth. He does, but it comes into play tapped. So he'll obviously put that land into play, but he has to decide between End Hostilities, Utter End, Stoke the Flames, Wingmate Rock. He can cast any of those cards.
What do you think about Wingmate Rock here?
Yeah, I think personally, I might Stoke the Mystic just to keep him off lands. I also might play the Wingmate. It's close. I mean, if he plays the Wingmate, he would go to 1, but he has the second white that doesn't cause him damage on the following turn because he drew Nomad Outpost.
Right. And he gets to start gaining 1 life a turn from the Wingmate Rock at least.
Yeah. One of the worst things that could happen to him would be a Nissa. So maybe he's going to wait and do the Stoke later. I think he's got a lot of close options here, and I think he's deciding. I think personally I would probably Stoke the Mystic, but I'm not sure if that's correct.
He's decided to wait. I assume he will be stoking the flames on the Mystic. He just... maybe he goes to 1. No, he's got to do it here.
You're not going to fall to 1, because if he plays another Mystic, you're going to end up stoking it anyway, and if that 1 squeaks in and kills you, I mean, you feel real bad.
You feel really bad. All right, so land is the only follow-up for Hyun, so here comes Elspeth. Doesn't have to pay any life to do that, and there's 3 1/1 soldier tokens here. And this is still very close.
Does Hyun only have Hornet Queen in hand?
Let's take a look. Yep.
And we know he can't cast that next turn.
No. I mean, I think that Nissa Worldwaker is the only thing that Socrates would be worried about, and he can survive that even if Hyun went like land Nissa.
It would be 1 point short.
It would still be a point short.
And that's a reason you can't take that 1 from the Mystic on the last turn, that you have to stoke it.
Yes. Yeah, super close.
Yeah.
It's just at the very last minute for Greece, but he is stable.
Yeah, and if the board stays clear for another turn or 2, Socrates is going to be able to get that Wingmate Rock online, and then he'll be able to gain a bunch of life with all these tokens.
Yeah.
And then the game will pretty much be put out of reach. But Hyun has a draw step or 2 before then, so these are key right here.
So what does Hyun find with his draw step? We know one of his cards, and he finds a land.
It's not the worst.
Temple of Malady does get him 1 step closer to the rock and gets him a scry.
Yeah, and it's land 6, and Hornet Queen is still a very powerful card. I don't know if it'll be enough to win this game, but, it's 5 creatures,
Yeah.
5 flying Death Touch creatures.
Very, very difficult to deal with without killing off all of your own things. Socrates trying to put his country through to the next round. They've got a tall order. They have to play USA if they win, while South Korea clings here to the hope of making it to the next round as well. All they need to do is win this game. They're 1 game away from advancing, but they are so far away as that Wingmate Rock hits, triggers, brings a friend, and as you said a second ago, Ben, if he's able to attack with all these things, they gain a bunch of life with all those spells in his hand still.
Yeah, even the Hornet Queen might not be enough.
It might not be enough. Does he find the land for it? Yes. He does. So Hyun is going to get to cast a Hornet Queen here.
Hornet Queen is awesome.
Huh. There's Nam Sung Wook.
And this game is not over because...
Feeling the pressure, I'd say.
Hyun will be able to trade 2 of the 1/1 Death Touch flyers from the Queen off for the Wingmate Rock and its token. And then he'll take most of the 1/1s from the Elspeth, and he'll have some flyers in play to try and close out Socrates. But Socrates is going to gain, 8 life this turn. So he'll be at 10, and Hyun's going to have to take a few turns to try and close him out with those flyers, which we know isn't going to work because we know that Socrates is holding an End Hostilities. But Hyun doesn't know that.
That's right. And in the meantime, everybody hits the red zone here. Go back up to 10 for Socrates.
And that should be Hyun's plan here. I believe he should block each of the 3/4 flyers with a 1/1 flying death touch, Hornet Queen on one of the Elspeth tokens, and probably take the other 5. You don't want to trade off your other flyers, because if Socrates had nothing, he could use those other those other 2 1/1 flyers and the Hornet Queen, so 4 points of flying damage a turn to try and close out Socrates. And then you block the 3/4 with 1/1/1 flying death touch. It can block one of yours anyway later, and you're not going to win the race by taking 3 and then beating back for 1.
No, I mean, this is actually just a huge attack from Socrates as far as Hyun's damage life total goes as well.
So Hyun makes the exact block I would make and that he should make, in my opinion.
Oh, that's why you're here.
Yeah.
We want your opinion.
And looking at Socrates' loaded hand, I don't think Hyun is going to have much of a chance. I mean, there are big draws for him. His deck does pack a lot of powerful spells.
Like another Hornet Queen, right?
Yeah, or maybe a Doomwake Giant.
Yeah.
I mean, we just tagged into this match, so I haven't seen his deck list, but I believe Black-Green usually plays stuff like that. I actually can take a look for everybody now. I know I want to.
Yeah,
I know I want to know, so I'm sure everyone at home wants to know also. And he does have 4 Doomwake Giant.
Oh, wow.
So if he drew Doomwake Giant here, that would appear to be a huge draw for him. Socrates would, of course, end hostilizing away everything.
All right, you know what he drew?
Whip of Erebos?
Liliana Vest.
Liliana Vest, that's interesting.
Is that fast enough is the problem. He's now down to 6 life. I mean, he can find running Doomwake Giants or, whatever he wants with Liliana Vest. I don't think the discard would be relevant with his opponent at 4 cards, but it's probably just too slow. I mean, look at all those tokens. He's just going to get bum rushed here.
Marshall, Liliana is not going to do it. He needed a big draw that impacted the board this turn to stay in this game. It needed to be possibly Whip of Erebos. Definitely Doomwake Giant would have been good. But Liliana Vest is not going to do it.
He's going to attack 1 Hornet at Elspeth to keep her off of ultimate range, play Liliana Vest.
Hyun had a ton of big draws.
Wow.
See the Unwritten. He's got 4 of those. He could have found Hornet Queen and Doomwake Giant.
That's going to do it, though. Hyun extends the hand, and it means that Team Greece, with smiles and hugs, is going to advance to the next round.
The underdogs.
They are going to be the underdogs because they're playing against Owen Turtenwald and Team USA, but this team from Greece has shown that they have some good stuff, and they're going to put up quite a fight, I would say.
Weren't they the last team to make day 2? 32nd place? Mm-hmm. What an incredible story.
Yeah, so we've got England, Denmark, Greece, USA here as we move on to the semifinals of the World Magic Cup. And we've already had a lot of great excitement. And, of course, we're going to have more as we continue throughout the course of the day. It's going to be a big, long, awesome day of Magic coverage. We certainly hope that you'll join us for the duration of it. Our whole coverage team woke up this morning and we were all excited. We're all eating breakfast. We're talking about the matchups. It's just one of those things that kind of consumes you.
Who can sleep the night before the top 8?
Yeah, especially the players. That's the thing. We'll bump into them because sometimes they'll be in the same lobby, hotel as us. And I just look at them eating breakfast and I just think I would be sitting there fidgeting and nervous.
I've been there a couple times and believe me, you are.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there ready to go. Yeah. Let's get in the game.
Let's get in there. All right. Speaking of ready to go, the news desk.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much to Marshall Sutcliffe and Ben Stark completing our semi-final lineup for the World Magic Cup. BDM, that's 1 mighty segment down, 4 incredible sets of Magic still to go.
I'm kind of looking forward to a 3rd segment showdown between
Denmark and Greece.
No.
Denmark and USA.
Half right.
England and Greece.
Getting colder.
England, USA?
Oh, come on. Wouldn't that be fun?
Really?
Wouldn't that be fun to be on the sidelines rooting along there?
I'd quite like to watch that one for sure. But 4 terrific teams in the semi-final lineup. Let's work out how they got there this morning. If you're just waking up around the world, we know lots of you in America are many hours behind us here in France. Thanks for being with us. It is 10:18 in the morning on Sunday morning here in France. If you're already in Japan, it's already 7 o'clock in the evening for you. 8 o'clock in the evening, and you're going, can't wait for Yuya Watanabe and Kentaro Yamamoto later in the day. Don't forget the top 4 of the World Championship coming up this afternoon. And, Brian David Marshall, sandwiched between the two tournaments, a product announcement. That's all, a product announcement with Hélène Bergeau. So, let's take a look at how the 4 teams advanced to the semi-finals. Here is our top 8 bracket. And BDM, you spent much of your morning watching the top quarterfinal between South Korea and Greece.
Yeah, it was it was a back and forth affair. South Korea got off to a very quick game. The match we just watched conclude had the first game on the board, I think, before any other result was in anywhere.
Right.
And then the matches evened up over the course very quickly. The red deck found itself outclassed by Corsair of Krufix very early in both games, and Greece took both of those games very quickly. On the far side, Nam Sung-wook took care of business in the middle, and then it came down to that table A match and your good friend Socrates.
Yeah, so it looks like Bill Chronopoulos is having a fantastic time. It seems that he met Socrates on his excellent adventure. So that is Greece through to the semi-final. Let's take a look at the board once again. There you see them, they're through, and they would play the winner of the Slovak Republic against the United States. Now, we were very busy out on the floor with other matches, but my sense, and we like to tell the truth to the viewers at home, my sense was that the Slovak-US match was less climactic than we might have hoped. It seemed not quite straightforward for the US, but there were very few points listening to Marshall in my ear that I thought, oh, this is going to come down to the wire. It actually felt like the US were reasonably dominant in that one.
Well, I mean, did Owen lose his match?
I didn't even follow exactly how it played out.
I believe I saw a tweet from Owen that said, "I lose, team wins."
Right.
Awesome.
Okay.
But I know that they really liked their matchups.
Yes, and matchups, as we're discovering, are really key to this unified team standard format. The 8th seed Greece, who began at 32, remember, eliminating Japan overnight, and then were 15 in their second pool, and still made it in as a bottom seed. US were also a bottom seed all the way through. But what about the bottom half of the bracket? Next up, we had Serbia against Denmark. So this one, Randy Buehler kept an eye on, and this was pretty straightforward for Denmark. Serbia, fantastic performance. Now this, of course, you squirreled this out, you news hound you.
Yes.
I've known Alexa Telerov forever as Alexa Telerov, the guy who always represents Serbia at team player. This is
7 times, right?
Right, this is his number 7. But you now know him as somebody different.
Yes, Moloku, the unclouded mirror in this case. Moloku, he's a very well-known Magic Online player, recently qualified for the MOCs, and has won multiple online PTQs, and is generally the nightmare of Magic Online grinders everywhere.
Yeah, so congratulations to him for making the top 8, but as we will see, it is Denmark who advanced through to the semi-finals, and you had a chance after their win to chat with the Danes.
I did, and let's get back to that after we talk about the bottom end of the bracket, because that's what we were talking about, that matchup.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so in our final quarterfinal, that saw England against Brazil. England were 1-0 up in all 3 matches very quickly. Brazil fought back through Willie Adel to tie it at 1-1. David Inglis won his match 2-0 fairly swiftly. Fabrizio Anteri playing blue-black control, the team captain, with his 4 Grand Prix top 8s, his over 70% GP win rate. Phenomenal performance by him. He lost game 2 to Gabriel Fair, but game 3 in the end was pretty comfortable for the English captain. Blue-black control advances, England advances, and so we will see an England-Denmark semi-final. So you were saying the Danes were chatting with you about this matchup.
Yeah, Fabrizio Anteri, by the way, the fastest blue-black player I've seen in this tournament.
Yeah, he's so crisp.
He is so crisp, and he plays that deck so quickly, getting 3 games done before most mid-range and aggro decks are done with 2.
And in fact, when I watch him, I'm pretty anxious, because that deck, when it's winning, gets more than 7 cards in hand quite a lot. And discard, I'm like, you've got 10. You need to discard 3. Discard 3. Make sure you're down to 7.
Which card?
stop it. Moving on. Tell us about the Danes.
So, the Danes. So here's the thing about England, and credit to them. They are 8-0 in Team Unified Standard right now. They are undefeated in this format, including a win over the Danes in pool play.
Now, you would think that might have a psychological edge, certainly because it's in the right format. But remember, England started out 0-2, and one of those 2 O's were Denmark.
That was Denmark
right at the start of the tournament.
Back in Team Sealed. So, obviously England has an excellent configuration for their decks, excellent players playing them. I asked Martin Muller, the captain of the Danish team, if he was worried about the matchup, and he actually feels, and we'll talk about it more when we look at the decks, but he actually feels that they line up very well against England. It felt like he says, obviously it's close. Obviously we can lose, but I think this one goes this way. I think this one goes this way, which is what happened. But I think when we match up again, a different match goes the other way.
Obviously I spoke to Team England. They have a slightly different take on this.
Okay.
They do also agree that there are some difficulties.
Basically, the blue-black deck is favored in both seats on the other team, right?
England believe that Fabrizio and Terry is well favored in blue-black. We'll take a look at the decks, actually, because I can tell you, Denmark fans, England fans, you will be on camera for the semi-finals. So Danish fans, rejoice. You can have your bacon sandwiches and watch Martin Muller. He is playing Mardu mid-range. There we see his deck on the screen. You see it working its way through. Lots of the usual suspects. And BDM, one of the key points about a deck like this, there is almost no compromise in terms of a full-on 75 standard deck as opposed to Team Unified Standard. So the compromise is next to none.
No, absolutely. This isn't a deck that's going to steal Heroes Downfalls from the blue-black control deck. And, because it's the 3-color deck, it really wants the Murderous Cuts and the Chain to the Rocks and the Crackling Dooms as its removal. So it's not really, where sometimes you had a lot of conflict between your two mid-range control-y decks fighting for the Heroes Downfalls. So you saw some decks were like, oh, well, we'll put Silence the Believers in our Obzon deck, or we'll put Heroes Downfall. We'll split the Heroes Downfalls, and you'll get a Murderous Cut, and you'll get a,
Yeah, you see, I was horrified by that because we did a segment at the desk with Nate Price and Ben Stark, and I heard him say, Heroes Downfall are incredibly important, so we're going to put 2 in each of 2 decks. How does that work?
You didn't see that happen very often. What you did see was that the blue-black deck needs its Heroes Downfalls. It needs to deal with Planeswalkers. So what's ended up happening is a lot of times you'll see the Sidisi Whip deck, which can easily use Murderous Cut and can use Murderous Cut more profitably, and has lots of creatures to attack Planeswalkers.
So that was Martin Muller. Let's see what else the Danes are running in this semi-final of the World Magic Cup. Here's Thomas Enevoldsen, the Grand Prix winner in Legacy with Death and Taxes, one of the most dominating, astonishing performances I've ever seen at a Grand Prix level. And here is his blue-black control list. And it goes on and on and on. It kills everything that it doesn't bother to counter. And then it draws some more cards so it can kill more things that it didn't bother to counter.
Heroes Downfall, Bile Blight, Drown in Sorrow, Silence the Believers, Aether Spouts, just a little bit of a time walk there, and 4 Perilous Vault.
Yeah, we believe that the blue-black control deck for Denmark is considerably favored. That is the David Inglis matchup with his Abzan Whip deck. Inglis thinks he's in big trouble, but he also thinks that this will come down to seat C. We'll see a blue-black control winner on the Denmark side against Inglis. We will see a blue-black control winner, Fabrizio Anteri, for England, and then seat C is what it could all come down to. But that's just on paper, and they didn't make Magic out of paper, they made it out of cards. So why don't we get to the action? Let's take you to the booth. Here comes Marshall Sutcliffe and Ben Stark.